Hey there, fans. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to enjoy this coil rebuilding tutorial. I'm going to show you how to build a single coil out of 26 gauge Canthal, and you can go ahead and build along with me while we're doing it, or you can just watch for a little bit of relaxation and enjoyment. The RDA that we're going to be building on is the Watofo Lush RDA, which we are going to be carrying, but we don't have them in yet. But this is what it looks like. It's a very solid deck with 4 posts, and I've been enjoying it a lot. So let's go ahead and get right into it. I got my 26 gauge Canthal here. You're going to need some cotton, which I have our cotton bacon, and I have the Ude Master Rebuild Kit here, which has all the tools that you could want to use. And we will be using most of them, so I can show you how they work. And I have my own meter, the Smock Omni Tester. A lot of people think coil building is really hard, but it's actually quite simple. You just need a little instruction and practice. I know that it certainly took me a few tries to get it right the first time, but once you get into it, it's kind of a second aspect of vaping that gives you something to do. It's almost like building a model or something, except in the end you get to use it in your regular usage. So I'm going to take off a piece of Canthal about like that, maybe 8 inches or so long. I'm going to take our wire cutters. Wind your Canthal back up because you won't need that anymore once you have your first piece. I'm going to do this on a 2mm diameter. And this kit comes with multiple sizes for you to wrap around here, and you just put it in the top and use it. I'm going to select the 2mm diameter one there and put everything else back inside. For this Ude Master Rebuilder coiler, it has a little screw in the side here, so you unscrew it and then you insert the rod that you would like to use, and then you screw it back down, and that'll make it nice and tight. So the way I use this, there's 2 ways to use this actually. Some people like to, you can take off the bottom part here, and you can put it on the rod size that you're using, and when you put your wire through the bottom here and do that, when you twist, it'll wrap the coil for you. I personally don't like that method. I just like to do it by hand. So that's how we're going to do it today. So I like to take my rod and I take a little bit of the edge of it and I just kind of hold it with my thumb there. So you have the edge of it there. And then it doesn't matter what the beginning part looks like at all. That's the main thing to know. That was my concern when I first started, was that every part of it matters. It doesn't. You're actually going to clip off a lot of it. So you can bend down this first part. It's no biggie. Start over here. And when you're building a microcoil, you want them to touch and be as close as possible. So just start doing your wraps. We're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're going to do 7 wraps of this 26 gauge. And once you get it wrapped, you can just push it down up against the base of that. Get them even closer together. And once you've made it that far, then you can take the rod out. I like to actually work with the rod rather than take the coil off of it. So take the rod out and then you have it like that. And then you just had the other thing before for something to hold on to. Once you have that, you can undo the first leg if you need to make everything even up, which is what I end up doing a lot of times because sometimes the first one's crooked. And so once you get it there, smush everything down again. And then you can clip off the extra parts of your leads. you don't really need all this extra slack. You're going to need some of it to get everything through, but generally I clip them off to about that short of a length. We'll get our coil put in through these 2 holes here. Just go ahead and shove it all the way in, and once you get up to the base here, I usually try to get as close as I can as possible while I'm doing this part of it, because you can always adjust it a little and pull it out a little more. And so I just tend to get as close as I can without touching it. And then we'll screw down the screws. You want to make sure they're nice and tight, but at this point I don't worry about fully tightening them yet while I'm still working with it. Over tightening could cause the leg to snap off and things like that, so I really like to make sure that the build is secure before I start really wrenching down on it. This is a great part about rebuilding, is that it doesn't have to be perfect to start with. You can do a lot of tweaking once it's mounted. And so with this, where it's at now, I'm going to put a little bit of outward pressure on it. Push out a little like that, and that'll tighten up all the legs. You can center it over just a little bit more where you would want it instead of being all far off to the side. And you can straighten it out if it's slanting diagonally or vice versa. So I like to use the rods, and if I'm dual coiling, but usually it helps for me to have 2 of these rods so that I can have them both in there like that while I'm doing it. So once you have that where you want it like that, then I usually tighten it up a little bit more. This is the point where I'll come back in, give it just a little bit more oomph. Sometimes doing that causes it to go diagonal again, so you might come back in and fix it there. Okay, so now that we have that, you can clip off the back legs, and you want to get them as close to the post as possible. You don't want any extra wire hanging out, touching other wires or anything like that, so I go pretty much right up to the hole and just snip it off. Turn our ohm meter on, and we'll see what resistance we're at. So we're reading somewhere on the border of 0.6, 0.7, so it's about probably 0.69. So it's fluctuating a little bit back and forth there. Sometimes you can tighten it up a little more. Maybe it'll make it more accurate as to where it wants to lie. So we're getting a 0.6 now that I've fully stabilized it. Ceramic is not conductive, so it can be done with this. If you're doing it with metal tweezers, what you want to do is fire it and get it to glow hot, and then you can squeeze it. Using ceramic tweezers makes this step a little faster because we can actually squeeze at the same time as we push, because they're not conductive, so you're not going to short out your coil by doing this. So you can hold it, you can get them where you want them, squish them closer together, and fire it while you're doing it. And there's no issues. So this is what's called a microcoil. You get the coils basically fused together to the point where it all glows as one long tube of its own. And you can further tweak it if they're not glowing evenly. You can tweak it a little if you need to, squish them a little closer. You could even go back to your rod and reposition it a little if you need to at this point. There's nothing wrong with that. We have our cotton bacon here. And generally when you're doing this, you don't need a whole lot. I kind of just tear off a little bit, like what I think might be good maybe. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And what I usually do is I twist up the end just a little bit. One thing to note is the cleanliness of your hands at this point is going to affect your flavor. If you have something on your hands and you're rolling your fingers around on this cotton, that's going to transfer flavor onto your thing when you go to wick it. So usually at the end here, I just try not to touch it as much as possible because the oils on your hand can help, or can do that a little too. So this little last part that I'm actually doing so that I can stick through here probably won't be actually part of the coil. I'll just cut that off. So when you're doing it, you want there to be some resistance, but not so much that it starts to mess with your coil. So for where I'm at now, it's given me a little bit of resistance. I've pulled off probably a little more cotton than I needed. At this point though, you can just pull out a little from this back side here. Just start pulling the fibers until you get a little less resistance. So now it goes through the rest of the way about as far as I want it to. I have a little bit of play with my cotton there, but not too much. You want it to be tight, but not cinching it down, because if you cinch it down, it won't be able to wick liquid properly. So once you've made it that far, then you can go ahead and cut the tails. Depending on the RDA you're using with the deck, some can have a lot of cotton, some you can't fit very much. This particular one has a pretty good amount of deck room, so I'm not really worried about the length of the legs. I'll cut it off to about like that, maybe. Center it up a little. Then you can use this tool, which is called a cotton hook, and it just basically helps you stuff it down into some of those tight spaces where you need to have it filled up. Once you've wicked it and tucked your cotton under after trimming off the ends and saturated it with your juice, then you can fire it, and this is how it'll be. Except you'll have your top cap on, so it won't quite look like that. And now that I fired it, I'm going to put just a little more on there. Then you can put your top cap on, and you're ready to go. So that's all there is to it. It's a really easy process. Now that we've built it, I'll go ahead and take a vape on it. Produces lots of clouds even with that small build. There's a lot of options for rebuilding. There's various gauges of material. You could dual coil this on both sides. People do all sorts of things, twisted, and various styles of building. The important thing is to make sure that you're reaching the right ohm limit. And all of those different types of build just produce vapor differently. Some of them produce it warmer. Some of them wick better and have a more consistent hit and things like that. This is a build that'll get you going though. If you're trying to move from stock coils to rebuilding, I would recommend this build because it's very easy to do, and it might not be ideal, particularly for an RDA like this that has such a wide deck that it can support a lot of different builds and bigger coil options. This is just going to be a really easy starter coil. It'll produce enough vapor for you to be satisfied, and it'll save you a lot of money in the end. It's a good thing to learn. It's a good skill to have, and once you've done this several times, you can find lots of other build videos and you'll be able to quickly move into any of those other ones. A lot of the concepts are the same as far as the mounting of it and testing it on your own meter and the wraps. It's just a question of how many wraps, what gauge, what size of a wrap you're wrapping it on. And so once you've considered those factors and figured out what coil you want to build, then go for that one. But for beginners, I would definitely start with this one. Give it a shot, build along with me like we just did, and see if you can get it going yourself. That's it for this tutorial, fans. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for taking the time with me to learn this, and go and try and do it yourself. I encourage you to get into the joy of rebuilding. It can be a lot of fun and a good way to kill a little bit of time, and it'll save you a lot of money in the end. So if you like this video, subscribe, like, comment, and until next time, vape for your own life.